What's going on, guys? Zuko back with another Dragonflight video. We're in the new place. Once again, if you guys were here for the last video, I talked about we're in a new place. The kitty is here. Come on. Yeah, so I'm going to continue to hopefully develop the background here over the months and years that we're doing this. I am planning on putting some pictures and stuff on the back wall. I'm planning on knocking over some gnomes. I'm sorry. So we'll work on all that and continue to kind of develop that for you guys. I've got some really cool plans I want for stuff back there, so we'll get there. But today we're going to talk about Arms Warrior. And in particular, we're going to talk about a single target build for Arms Warrior and for Raid. So this is going to include basically a sort of a defensive component. Let me just move this over here a little bit. There we go. A defensive component on the class side of the tree. We're going to talk all about what defenses you can bring to a raid to help yourself survive and what utility you can bring to help your team survive. And then also, what is the build going to be on the other side? And I do have an interesting kind of bleed build for Arms Warrior, including Skullsplitter. That's one of the main features here. Rend and Skullsplitter working together. And then we have Thunderous Roar buffing your bleeds as well as Bloodletting down here. So it's a bleed style build, but it also includes mostly a lot of Mortal Strike resets, and that's going to be your main source of damage. As you can see on the dummies that I was practicing on, we ended up sustaining about 40k, just over 40k damage, and Mortal Strike is going to be the main one there. Now, what I also want to show off in this build, we're going to do the regular test on the dummy, and then like a couple minutes in, I'm going to switch into like execute mode. Okay, and I want to make sure that we get a good sense for what does this build feel like when you do get into execute on the boss fight, because that's a massive part of this build as well. We have Executioner's Precision down here, and we'll get to all that in a minute. So that's what the dummy test is going to be, me doing a regular rotation for like 2 minutes or so, and then we'll flip into execute mode, and we'll get there. So let's look at the class side of the tree first. Let's just look at what are we looking at here in terms of like defenses and healing and all that good stuff. So number one, let's start with mobility. There's actually a lot of mobility on the class side here for Arms Warrior. To start off, you got Heroic Leap with the buff, Bounding Stride, which is really good, and you get 2 charges of charge. So these used to compete with each other in Shadowlands, right? On the talent tree, they don't anymore. So you get the movement speed from Heroic Leap, and you get 2 charges from Double Time, which is really, really good. And then on top of that, you actually just get a flat boost to your movement speed up here with Fast Footwork. So it's really good, actually. That's a decent enough amount of movement speed. I could also take Intervene if I wanted another dash to take to go to an ally and to get myself out of danger. But in reality, you should be okay with double Heroic Leap, movement speed, and just having Double Time so you can get back to the boss. So it allows you to, you know, respect the mechanics that are coming up from the boss if you have to get out of melee, and you can charge back in basically any time. You don't ever have to worry about charge not being on cooldown. Nope, there's another sub. Sorry, guys. That's a sub for Twitch there. Okay, so that's mobility. Let's talk about defense. The absolute biggest, and I think something that nobody really understands or talks about, not that they don't understand it, but people just pass over this so easily, is defensive stance. We are getting defensive stance. So normally you're going to start in battle stance, and that's fine. But as soon as a big ability comes up, you can just swap into defensive stance and take 20% less damage whenever you want to. Like, think about, like, Hunter, for example. On the Hunter class tree, you get Survival of the Fittest. It's a 20% DR on a, like, 3-minute cooldown or a 2-minute cooldown if you talent into points that reduces cooldown. This is 20% DR whenever you want it. You can just toggle this thing. It's a 3-second cooldown. So if you switch from battle stance to defensive stance, you have 3 seconds before you can go back to battle stance. But, like, oh my god, this is completely insane. 20% DR, an amazing addition for Arms Warrior. So you should basically always be able to tank big mechanics that are coming in. You just have to time it properly with your defensive stance. So very good stuff right there. That's the biggest one in my opinion. Then, of course, there's a really cool interaction over here. Reinforced plates plus Armor to the Teeth. I'll just move my camera a little bit. Some of you guys have talked about the camera stuff. This is the complete build right here. So my bad there, but we have reinforced plates, which increases your armor by 20%, which just means you're going to take less damage. which is really good. So I take almost 34% less damage from attacks. And then you have Armor to the Teeth, which gives you strength equal to your armor, 10% of your armor. Very, very good. So you kind of need to take both of these for throughput reasons, which means you're going to end up skipping out on pain and gain, but that's okay. This is actually going to give you more damage, which is really cool because it gives you a couple hundred strength, which is completely insane to me. Really, really good stuff there. So on top of that, we have, of course, Spell Reflect, which is really, really good. You're going to take 20% less magic damage. This is a buffed version of Spell Reflect. Spell Reflect used to say you take 20% less spell damage until you get hit by a spell, in which case it reflects that spell, which is great. But then it would stop you from taking 20% more magic damage. So 20% less magic damage. So now it says it will reflect the next spell cast on you and reduce magic damage you take by 20% for 5 seconds. So you're getting, if you have like magic damage rot happening, like nature damage over time, fire damage over time, you'll get the 20% DR against that, and you will reflect the next spell if there's actually a spell coming at you. So much more versatile version of Spell Reflect. 20% magic DR, 20% all DR on defensive stance. That means you can take 40% less magic damage if you have defensive stance up and Spell Reflect up. Insane, insane survivability for Arms Warrior. On top of that, we have healing and sustain coming up for Arms Warrior. Second Wind is really strong, in my opinion. For any fight that isn't like a rot fight, this is insane amounts of healing. 6% of your health every second when you haven't taken damage for 5 seconds. Even if this only triggers, like let's say it finally comes off cooldown and you get like 4 procs, 4 seconds of Second Wind. That's 24% of your health that you just healed, like for free. So Second Wind is incredibly strong. You get 5% leech right here with Leeching Strikes, also incredibly strong. You could take Bitter Immunity if you also want. If you want to get rid of, like, again, another rot fight that has diseases, poisons, or curses, you could get rid of that, which is really, really nice. And then the biggest thing, in my opinion, is Impending Victory. You can just take Impending Victory and have a 30% max HP heal whenever you want it. And, of course, the cooldown's never going to get refreshed because you're not going to kill a raid boss until you kill it. Like, you're not going to get multiple kills, right? But it's a 25-second cooldown. You just get a huge heal every 25 seconds. So massive, massive amounts of healing. Finally, on the skill, on the talent tree, Spec side, sorry, you get Fueled by Violence, which I don't think is going to be that much healing. But who knows? Our Deep Wounds healing was about 813k. So you would have healed on this fight that I'm fighting on the dummy. I would have healed for 413,000 damage just because of Deep Wounds. You heal for 50% of the damage dealt by Deep Wounds. So it's not insignificant, but it's not like the greatest thing ever. The biggest thing on the Spec side is going to be Defensive Stance and Spell Reflect, giving you a ton of DR. So very, very good stuff there. Now, let's talk about the build. I talked about it a little bit already. Basically, you're going to be doing a bleed build. And again, a lot of the damage is going to be focused on Mortal Strike, outside of sort of getting your bleeds up and running. And the bleed build consists of Skullsplitter. And on a single target, when you hit Skullsplitter, it will instantly cause your Rend and your Deep Wounds to expire. It doesn't mean that they don't do any damage. It means they do their full duration of damage in 1 second. So if you have just recently applied Rend to the target, and you've just recently Mortal Striked, when you hit Skullsplitter, it'll go brrr, it'll pull all those bleeds out of the enemy and deal that damage. On top of that, it will generate a ridiculous amount of rage. You'll see on the dummy when I do it. When your bleed effects have a chance to grant you 5 rage, when you pull the remaining bleeds out of the enemy with Tide of Blood, it causes any triggers on blood surge that were going to happen. They all happen like simultaneously. So it pulls the entire 18-second rend, 21-second rend out of the enemy, and the 18-second Deep Wounds. It just goes pulls them all out, and then it also has a chance to proc all the blood surge. And basically, every time I press Skullsplitter, my rage goes to full. Just every single time. It's ridiculous. So that's kind of how the bleeds are working. We have Thunderous Roar, which buffs all of our bleeds here, increases the Thunderous Roar bleed duration, and then increases the damage of all your bleed effects by 15% at all times. Bloodborne increases our bleed effects by 15% at all times, so we have 30% more bleeding. And then we have Bloodletting. Deep Wounds, Rend, Thunderous Roar, bleed effects last 6 seconds longer and have a 5% increased critical strike chance. So We have 30% more bleed damage, we have higher crit on our bleeds, and we have a longer duration on our bleeds. That's the main chunk of the build there. The other big chunk of the build is going to be Mortal Strike, and in particular, one of the standout talents for me is Exhilarating Blows. So Exhilarating Blows says Mortal Strike in this case has a 15% chance to instantly reset its own cooldown. This is so incredibly strong. Yes, Mortal Strike it doesn't make it free, but just getting the reset on Mortal Strike is incredible because Mortal Strike does so much damage. Remember, it does 19,000 damage, but if we have deep wounds on the enemy, then it does 26% more damage instead. So it's never just doing 19,000 damage. It's always going to be doing much, much more. I've had multiple 100k crits on Mortal Strike. You can see right here in the breakdown, I had a 126k crit on Mortal Strike. So this thing's hitting very, very hard. Okay. The other thing that buffs Mortal Strike is this Colossus Smash. So Colossus Smash does more. Instead of taking Warbreaker, because we're not doing AoE, you take Blunt Instruments. Colossus Smash does 30% more damage, and its effect lasts for 3 seconds longer. So Colossus Smash now does 23,000 damage all on its own, which is outrageous. And then finally, you've got Executioner's Precision down here. Execute causes the target to take 25% more damage from your next Mortal Strike, stacking up to 2 times. That combos really well with Martial Prowess, which makes Overpower buff your next Mortal Strike by 20%. So you can have a 45% increased damage Mortal Strike in a Colossus Smash window. You see why the damage gets kind of outrageous now? Okay, so let's do the build. Let me show you what it looks like on the dummy. One thing that can be difficult to do on these dummies is like I'm gonna try not to press execute as much as possible when I'm not in the execute phase. So for the first 2 minutes of this test, I'm gonna press execute only when I get a sudden death proc. Okay? That's when I'm going to press execute. Otherwise, after the 2 minutes are up, I am going to press execute as if I'm in the execute window. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Basically, what ends up happening is execute is going to replace slam. Slam is my filler during the regular portion of the fight. When we get into the execute phase, I don't press slam anymore. I'm pressing execute instead. Okay? Let me make sure all my buffs are on. I'm just want to give like a semi-accurate depiction of this. Now, we do have the tier set bonus on as well for Season 1. Mortal Strike and Cleave damage, chance to damage and chance to critically strike increased by 10%, which is nuts. So I'm just doing 10% more Mortal Strike damage, and it has 10% more crit. Mortal Strike, Cleave, and Execute. Critical strikes increase the damage and critical strike chance of everything else by 5%. So very boring, as I said in my tier set video, but it's very good. So here we go. Here's what this looks like. We're going to charge, and we're going to press Avatar. Because of the class tree, Avatar is going to grant us Recklessness at reduced effectiveness. Okay? Recklessness is, of course, giving us massive rage generation, which is really good. Our rage generation is still coming from our auto attacks with War Machine and also from Blood Surge. So we're going to start out by getting all of our bleeds out right out of the gates. Bleeds are going to go first. And then we're going to get into the Mortal Strike window. Here we go. There we go, do this, and then this. Let me do this. And then we pull all the bleeds out with Skullsplitter, and then we keep going. There, we got a reset on Mortal Strike. There's an execute. Get that going again. There we go. Slam. I'm only going to try and press execute if I have an actual sudden death proc. Want to be very careful. 2 Mortal Strikes in a row. Love that. Here comes Colossus Smash. I always want to put Colossus Smash with Skullsplitter. Okay? That's the combo. I am using In for the Kill, which gives me a haste burst. A burst of haste, sorry, when I'm pressing Colossus Smash. You could use Test of Might if you want to. That is an absolute option for you. It's just up to you what you want to do. I like In for the Kill a lot more, but that's just the way it is. It's always up to you what you guys want to do there. Okay? Mortal Strike. Here comes Colossus Smash again. Boom. We have an Execute in there as well, and this. We're going to go this into Skullsplitter, and then we're going to reapply our Rend. So the Skullsplitter pulls all the Rend out, which is really, really nice. You can see we're hovering about 40k here. 41k, depending on what's going on. You want to press Mortal Strike as much again. There's another Mortal Strike reset again. There we go. You want to press Mortal Strike as many times as you possibly can, in my opinion. Avatar's coming back. We're going to do Colossus Smash with Avatar. Avatar first, then Colossus Smash. Here we go. Then we're going to do Rend, and we're going to pull out with Skullsplitter right here. Pull out all the bleeds, and it does a lot of extra damage. I realize my phrasing there was, you know, a little bit suspicious, but I know you guys are mature enough not to call me out on that. And this is basically the entire build, guys. You just keep doing... I'm filling with Slam. I'm pressing Mortal Strike whenever it's up. I'm pressing Execute whenever I get a sudden death proc up there. I got another one right there. We're trying to keep Rend up, which I'm totally not doing right now. I messed that up really hard. Skullsplitter's back. We're going to pull out the bleeds and reapply them. We got a big haste buff right now. Execute is going to buff our Mortal Strike. Okay, now we're getting into the Execute phase. Let's say we're getting into the Execute phase right now. So we're going to go Execute, Overpower, Mortal Strike. You want to try and Execute before every single Mortal Strike, okay? Because Execute buffs the damage of our next Mortal Strike every single time. So now I'm not pressing Slam anymore. I'm just pressing Execute, okay? I'm going to do this into Skullsplitter. Still doing that combo. Reapply our bleeds and more Execute. And then the real thing that we want to notice here is, are we running out of rage? And the answer is no, we're not. $127k Mortal Strike. There you go. Avatar into our bleed. We're going to do Skullsplitter in a minute. Another bleed, Thunderous Roar. Okay, here we go. Skullsplitter is coming. Pull it out. There we go. The bleeds are bleeding. And you can see we can get a little bit more damage in the Execute window. Instead of only doing 40k, we're getting almost up to 42k. If I was playing this, you know, totally correctly, then we probably... There we're at 42k. There we go. Look at that. Just as I say it, we end up making it work. That's the build, guys. On another 127k Mortal Strike. Mortal Strike's just hitting very, very hard. Anger Management is continuously cooling down Colossus Smash, which is awesome. We're going to do a Rend into Colossus Smash, into Skullsplitter to pull all the bleeds out. And then back to our rotation. So this is what the Execute phase will look like. Overpower, Execute, Mortal Strike. Overpower, Execute, Overpower, Mortal Strike. It's very simple. There's nothing really to it. So that's it, guys. We're at about 42k. If you were playing it better than me, which of course all you Arms Warrior mains probably could, you'd be able to get even more damage, I'm sure. But this is the single target bleed build for Raid, and I think it actually works quite well. My main takeaway, the biggest thing that I think has changed for Arms Warrior that is really making me want to play this and actually have fun playing it, is the rage generation that has happened now. It is actually crazy how much rage generation you get, because you can take War Machine and you're getting something like Blood Surge, and you have these big cooldowns down here that are giving you more rage. 20 more rage from Avatar and Thunderous Roar. I just feel like all the cooldowns for Overpower, just continuously resetting things like Mortal Strike and just allowing you to press a button that doesn't consume any rage. It feels like Blizzard has really buffed the rage generation, the sustain of rage for Arms Warrior. And to me, that was the biggest problem with the spec the entire time that made me not want to play it, was being frustrated with running out of rage and not really understanding how to manage my rage very well. Like, I just wasn't a very good Arms Warrior, but now it feels like that barrier to entry is down, and you're able now. Anybody could pick up Arms Warrior with a build similar to this and have fun playing it and feel like they basically never run out of resources as long as they're sort of playing it correctly, semi-correctly anyway. I wasn't even probably playing it perfectly. You could min-max this build much more than the way that I'm doing it now, and you would do more damage and it would feel even smoother. So all the rage generation between War Machine, Bloodletting, other cooldowns like Skullsplitter, Thunderous Roar, Avatar, you have so much extra rage, and because you have extra rage, it allows you to dump that rage into other abilities and do more damage, and it just feels really good to play. So that's the single target build for Raid, guys. Lots of defensives over on the class side of the tree here, lots of extra healing, lots of mobility. It all feels very, very good. The bleed part of the build, I think, is very cool. You have Blood Surge, which generates a bunch of rage for you. You've got Ren plus Skull Splitter, pulling out all those bleeds, causing them to expire instantly, generating a bunch of rage because of Blood Surge. All the bleed damage buffs from Thunderous Roar and from Bloodletting are there. And then the main sort of steady part of the build is going to be pressing Mortal Strike, getting resets on Mortal Strike, buffing your Mortal Strike damage with Execute and with Overpower, getting as much Mortal Strike damage in as you can, and you're cooling down Colossus Smash with Anger Management. Let me look one more time at the overall damage that we did there. Right about here. We were about 42k sustain. Execute damage started to climb near the end of the fight because we were able to press it so much more often. But really, Mortal Strike's going to be king. We had a 127k crit right there. And then your bleeds are all down here. So you've got 20% of your damage from these bleeds here. And then Thunderous Roar doing another 7%. So 27% of your damage is actually all in your bleeding. Your bleeding damage did more than Mortal Strike. So if it feels like they're not doing a whole lot, just look at the damage breakdown here. Dot, Thunderous Roar is a dot. Those all did more damage combined than your Mortal Strike actually did. So that's the build, guys. Single target raid build for Arms Warrior going into Dragonflight Season 1. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What do you think about Arms Warrior? Are you excited about the new raid, Vault of the Incarnates? What do you think about this build with all the different combos that I've showed you off here? Let me know in those comments down below. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. I love you all. I'll see you in the next one.